I didn't know what to do with what my aunt said. She'd whispered it like a joke that wasn't funny, leaning over the chipped kitchen table while I was grabbing my jacket. "Don't be gentle tonight," she said, her breath warm with wine. No context, no explanation, just those words, and a look I didn't know how to read. I left before she could add anything. The night colder than it should have been for early spring. The shop was half lit when I got there. An old repair place tucked between a laundromat and a thrift store, smelling faintly of motor oil and burnt coffee. It was where I worked most nights, mostly alone. Except Thursdays. Thursdays she came in. Marion. Not a customer, not really. She ran the small bookshop next door, the one with the crooked shelves and handwritten recommendations. Sometimes, when her card reader was acting up or her register drawer jammed, she'd come over. Said I had the kind of hands that could fix stubborn things. She was maybe mid-40s, maybe older, hard to tell. Not in a vain way, just in a lived-in way. Confident. Sharp. Wore jeans that didn't pretend to be anything but jeans. Hair pulled up like she couldn't be bothered with precision but somehow always looked intentional. That night, I was elbow-deep in the guts of an old till from a diner that owed me cash when I heard her voice at the door. "You look like you've lost a fight," she said. I looked up. Grease smudged across my knuckles. Maybe my face too. "More like a long argument," I said. "The register's winning." She stepped inside, the bell jangling behind her. The room felt smaller, and not just because it was cluttered. She smelled faintly of paper and rain. "Your aunt called me today," she said, leaning against a shelf of spare parts like she owned the place. My stomach tightened. "She did. She wanted me to tell you the bookstore's heater's making a noise again." A small shrug. Could be nothing. Could be something. I wiped my hands on a rag, suddenly aware of how quiet the place had gone. The hum of the fluorescent lights the only thing cutting through it. "Want me to take a look?" I asked. "That'd be nice," she said. No smile. Just that low, steady tone. Like she wasn't asking. Exactly. We walked next door together, not talking much. The shop was dim, shelves casting long shadows, smelling of ink and dust and something sweet. Maybe tea. The heater rattled, all right. A loose panel, nothing serious. I crouched to fix it, aware of her standing nearby, arms folded, one finger tapping her elbow like she was trying not to fidget. "You're quiet tonight," she said. I tightened a screw. "Lot on my mind." "Good things?" I looked up, met her eyes. "Too long, probably." "Not sure yet." Something shifted then, not in what was said, but in the pause after, like we'd stepped too close to a line we didn't even know we were drawing. She broke it first, clearing her throat. "You saved me from a freezing shop floor, so I owe you tea," she said, turning toward the counter before I could answer. I stayed crouched there a second longer than I needed to, staring at the screws, at my own hands, at nothing. Because what lingered wasn't the heater or the tea. It was the way her voice had gone softer for just a moment, like something inside her wanted to say more, but didn't. That night, I kept replaying her voice in my head, like I missed something, or maybe wanted something. The next time we spoke, it wasn't about heaters or tills or broken card readers. It was about boxes. Her shop had gotten a late shipment. Crates of used books from a library sale 2 towns over, and she couldn't move them alone. My aunt volunteered me, though she didn't exactly ask first. Just left me a message. Marion could use a hand. Be useful. When I walked into the shop, Marion was standing in the middle of a maze of boxes. Hair falling loose in strands she kept tucking behind her ear. She looked tired, not in a fragile way, but in the way of someone who's been standing all day and hasn't had a proper meal. "You don't have to do this," she said as soon as she saw me. "I was going to bribe the mailman." I shrugged. "Guess I got here first." Her laugh was short, quiet, not dismissive, just contained, like she didn't want it to get away from her. We worked in silence mostly. I carried boxes. She opened them, sorted spines with a rhythm like she'd done it 1,000 times. I watched the way her hands moved, quick, practiced, deliberate. They trembled once when she set down a heavy stack, and she drew them back like she hoped I hadn't noticed. "You okay?" I asked. "Fine," she said too fast. Then softer, "Just long week." I nodded, not pushing. I kept catching details I didn't mean to. The faint smear of ink on her thumb, the way her sweater sleeves kept sliding past her wrists, her mouth tightening whenever a title meant something to her. At one point, she stopped mid-motion. Holding a book open like a door she wasn't sure she wanted to walk through. Her eyes didn't move across the page. Just stayed there, still. "You ever read this?" she asked without looking up. I glanced at the cover. Some novel from the 80s, name I didn't recognize. "No," I said. She closed it gently, thumb still on the edge like she wasn't ready to let it go. "I was 20 when I read it. Thought I understood love then. Turns out I just liked the way it sounded." Her voice cracked on the last word. Barely. I wanted to say something, anything, but the air felt fragile, like one wrong sound would break whatever honesty had slipped out. She put the book back, rubbed her hands on her jeans, like none of it mattered. But it did. We finished the boxes. I swept the packing paper into a pile while she leaned against a shelf, arms folded, eyes somewhere past the window. For a second, I thought she was going to speak. The way her lips parted, the breath she held, but nothing came. She looked at me like she wanted to say something, but didn't, and that silence felt louder than words. The rain wasn't supposed to last, but it did. Sheets of it, hammering the pavement, drowning the usual sound of traffic outside the shop. Marion had stayed late to finish inventory. I was supposed to be home, but my aunt called, said the shop's fuse had tripped again. I brought my toolbox, told myself it was just work. By the time I got there, the lights were dimmed to half, running off a backup circuit. The shop felt different like that, softer, like it had exhaled. Marion was behind the counter, hair loose now, a mug in her hands she kept warming but not drinking from. "You came," she said, like she wasn't sure she wanted me to. "You called," I said, setting the toolbox down. "Or, well, my aunt did. I guess you didn't really call me at all." Faint smile. "That sounds about right." I fixed the fuse fast. 10 minutes tops, but neither of us left. Maybe because the rain was heavy. Maybe because neither of us said we wanted to. We sat on the floor between stacks of unshelved books, a plate of crackers between us like it was dinner. She'd kicked off her shoes, curled one leg under her. I leaned against a stack that smelled like old paper and rainwater. "You ever feel," she started, then stopped, chewing on nothing. "Never mind." "What?" I asked. She shook her head, looking down at the crackers. "It's stupid. I can do stupid." A long breath. Then, "Some nights feel borrowed, you know? Like they weren't meant to happen. Like if you touch them too hard, they'll disappear." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. I just watched her fingers trace the edge of the plate. She laughed once, softly, like at herself. "Ignore me. It's been a long day. I'm tired." We sat like that a while. Rain hitting the windows, the hum of the old heater filling the space we weren't. Then her phone buzzed. She picked it up, stared at the screen too long before answering. "Yeah," she said quietly. "No, not tonight." I said, "No, Alex. I can't." She paused, glanced at me, then turned away, lowering her voice. "Just don't, please." When she hung up, she stayed still for a beat, like her body hadn't caught up to her decision. "Everything okay?" I asked carefully. She nodded, but it wasn't convincing. "Old story," she said, setting the phone face down on the counter. "Better left closed." We didn't speak for a while after that. I kept watching her hands, how they folded into her sleeves like she wanted to disappear into herself. I shifted closer, not even sure why. Maybe to comfort. Maybe to close some gap I didn't know had opened. My hand was halfway to hers when she said, "You should go now." And I did. But only my body left that room. I didn't see her for 3 days. I told myself it was fine, that it wasn't my business when she opened the shop, or if she did at all. But each night, when the street outside went quiet, I caught myself glancing toward her windows like a fool. On the 4th day, she was there, locking up late. I almost kept walking. Almost. "Hey!" I said like I just happened by. She looked up, startled, then not. "You're out late." Could say the same. The night smelled like wet pavement and old leaves. The bookstore's sign buzzed faintly above us, throwing pale light over her face. "You want to talk?" I asked before I could think better of it. Her keys stilled in her hand. For a long second, neither of us moved. Then she nodded, just once, and unlocked the door again. Inside, the shop was colder than usual. We didn't bother with lights. Just the soft glow from the street outside, catching the edges of shelves like shadows trying to stay still. We sat on opposite sides of the counter, like we'd negotiated distance without words. "I don't know what's happening," I said finally. She folded her arms, then unfolded them. "Nothing's happening." "That's not true." She looked away, jaw tightening like she wanted to bite the words before they formed. I leaned forward, elbows on the counter. "Marian, what are we doing?" The sound of her name in that quiet space felt dangerous, like I'd cracked something we couldn't fix. She pressed her fingers to her temple. "We're being stupid," she said, almost to herself. "Feels like more than that." Her eyes flicked up, held mine a second too long. "You're young," she said, soft but not gentle. "You don't understand how these things unravel." "Maybe not," I said. "But I know I can't stop thinking about you." That hung there, a weight neither of us moved to lift. Her breath came uneven, like she'd started to speak and forgot how. "You think that's a compliment?" "No," I said. "I think it's a problem." She almost smiled. Almost. Then it faded, leaving something raw in its place. "This isn't supposed to happen," she whispered. I waited. Her hand flexed against the countertop, then stilled again. "You'll regret this one day," she said. "And I'll be the one who let it start." "I'm not asking you for anything," I said quietly. I stopped, because the rest of that sentence wasn't safe. She didn't say anything, just looked at me, like she was already mourning something we never even had. It was late again. Always late, always after everything else had emptied out. I wasn't supposed to be at the shop that night. I'd gone to grab a charger I'd left behind. She was in the back, lights low, radio murmuring old jazz like it was afraid to be heard. She didn't see me at first. She was sitting at the little desk by the storeroom door, an envelope open in front of her, hands shaking just enough that the paper edges trembled. "Everything okay?" I asked quietly, not wanting to startle her. She startled anyway, a small, sharp inhale, then a breath let out slow. "Didn't hear you come in. Didn't mean to scare you." She folded the letter, set it down, but didn't hide it. Not like before. "You look," I started, then stopped. "Like someone's been cracked open," she said, almost laughing but not. I stepped closer, leaning against the edge of a shelf. "Want to talk about it?" For a long time she didn't, just stared at the paper like it might rearrange itself if she looked long enough. Then, softly, "It's from his sister." I didn't ask who. Some part of me already knew from the way her voice thinned around the word his. "She says she found an old photo," Marian continued, "of us, in a box. Said she thought I should have it." She reached for the envelope, slid out a small photograph, held it like it might break. In it, a younger Marian, hair longer, a little wilder, leaning against a man I'd never seen. He had the kind of grin that made you believe whatever he was selling. "He died," she said quietly. 8 years ago. Motorcycle. We weren't together anymore, but..." Her throat tightened. But we almost were again. And then I never got the chance to fix it. I didn't say anything. Didn't trust my voice not to ruin the air between us. She looked at me then. Really looked. Not through me, not past me. At me. You remind me of him sometimes, she said. Not in the way you look. Just the way you make a room feel less heavy. Her eyes softened, then flickered away as if that softness might burn. I don't know what to do with that, she whispered. I moved closer without meaning to, until we were breathing the same quiet. Her fingers brushed the photo like a farewell she never got to give. Then she took a breath like she hadn't allowed herself to in years. And for the first time, she looked at me without fear. We didn't talk about the photo again. It sat on the counter for a few days, then disappeared into a drawer, maybe, or a book. I didn't ask. She didn't offer. But something between us had shifted, like the floor wasn't quite where we'd left it. I came by after closing, not because of a fuse or a heater or a favor, just because I didn't want to go anywhere else. She was in the reading corner, legs folded under her, glasses slipping down her nose, a sweater hanging off one shoulder like it had given up fighting. You're here late, she said without looking up. So are you. Occupational hazard. I sat on the floor across from her, back against a shelf. For a while, the only sound was the soft turning of pages and the streetlight buzzing outside. You know, she said finally, this doesn't make sense. I nodded. No, it doesn't. We shouldn't even be sitting here. Probably not. She closed the book, set it gently aside. I keep thinking about the last few weeks, about how I keep waiting for the part where it stops, where I wake up and remember who I'm supposed to be, and you go find someone who fits where you're heading. I didn't move. And? I asked. And it doesn't stop, she said. Eyes fixed on the rug, voice small in a way I'd never heard from her. It just keeps being here. You keep being here. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. I don't know how to undo that, I said. I don't think I want to. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't awkward anymore. It was heavy, but in a way that held us both. Then she did something small, nothing cinematic, nothing anyone else would notice. She reached over, fingers barely brushing mine. Not even a full touch, just enough to ask a question without words. I turned my hand, let our fingers hook together like it was the most natural thing in the world. We sat like that, not looking at each other, not daring to name what it was, just breathing the same air, letting everything unsaid settle between us like dust in soft light. She leaned forward eventually, rested her forehead against my shoulder. No words, just warmth, just presence. She didn't say she loved me, but she let her guard down, and that was louder than any "I love you" ever could be. I'm telling this now because enough time has passed that it doesn't feel like a secret anymore. Not a scandal either, just a story that happened to belong to both of us quietly, for a while. We didn't explode into anything. There were no declarations, no families to confront, no doors slammed. What we had grew the way moss does. Slow, in the quiet, in places nobody bothers to look. Looking back, I think what changed first was me. Before Marion, I thought of love like a switch, on or off, yes or no, bold or boring. But with her, it wasn't a switch. It was a dimmer, a slow-turning dial I didn't even notice at first, until suddenly I was standing in a room I didn't want to leave, lit just enough to see her face clearly. She changed, too. Not in a dramatic way. More like she stopped flinching at the idea of wanting something again. She laughed more even at bad jokes. Stopped hiding her hands in her sleeves when she was tired. Sometimes she'd lean against me in the quiet, like it was the most normal thing in the world. Like she'd always done it and always would. We never gave what we had a name. Maybe we were afraid a name would break it. Maybe we just didn't need one. People assume love has to look like a headline. But some of the best parts of it, the parts that keep breathing years later, happen in moments nobody else would notice. A thumb brushed across a knuckle, A quiet breath shared in the back of a bookshop. A look that says I see you, even when you're not saying a word. I still think about the night she rested her forehead on my shoulder. Like it was a choice, not a reflex. I remember thinking, this is it. This is how something begins when nobody's trying to start it. Now, whenever I walk past the shop, new owner, new shelves, same uneven floor, I catch myself smiling. Not because I want it back, because it happened, because it mattered, because some stories aren't about forever. They're about finding the person who shows you a version of yourself you didn't know could exist. So if you're listening to this, wondering what to do with the person who makes the world tilt a little when they walk into the room, pay attention. Not to the rules or the fear or the noise. Pay attention to the quiet. Sometimes that's where the real story is. And if you've ever had something like this, or if you think you're standing at the edge of it now, tell me in the comments what you saw first. The look, the silence, the thing they didn't say that you felt anyway. I want to know.